let's talk about how you actually build real estate wealth in Germany. Let's talk about appreciation of the apartment itself. Let's talk about increasing rents and how you can benefit from this. So let's have an easy example. You buy one apartment for 200,000. So let's say a 1-bedroom apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment, and you rent it out. Easy start for the beginning. Let's say your first apartment. We will look at a time horizon of 10 years. You will see in a few minutes why 10 years are important if you rent real estate out. So let's get started. You have, let's do it differently. You have 2% inflation. And let's calculate conservatively. We know that we have more than 2% inflation, but let's calculate conservatively. You have 2% inflation. If everything is becoming more expensive, also the value of your apartment is growing due to inflation. So after 10 years, out of the 200,000, 2% a year, so you have 240,000. I know before compound interest effect, okay? Just to have easy numbers, you know it's even more. So you have 2% inflation, so the value of the apartment is already 240,000 euros. Now you have 2% amortization, so the principal of the loan, the repayment rate of the loan without the interest. In German it's called Tilgung. So after 10 years, you only have 160,000 euros mortgage left. And this is not paid by you, this is actually paid by the tenant. So after 10 years, you have a profit of 80,000 euros gross. But now let's say you receive a rent of 600 euros. And in the beginning, just as an example, your entire costs for the property are 800 euros. So you invest 200 euros out of your own pocket. Why 800 euros? Well, so you have the interest. So interest plus amortization rate is the whole mortgage payment. You have interest, you have probably a property management company, so you don't have to take care of that property yourself, especially if you might leave Germany at a certain point, if you might leave a city at a certain point, and if you have a language barrier, no knowledge, and so on. Interest, management, and maintenance of the apartment. So you save some money for future renovations, reparations, and so on, which is already included here. So you have 200 euros out of your own pocket. So over 10 years, 200 times 12 is 24, times 10 is 24. So you invest 24,000 euros out of your own pocket over 10 years. So we have 80 minus 24 results in the profit of 56,000 euros if you buy real estate. Now, why are 10 years important? Oh, come on. Because if you sell one apartment that you rent out after 10 years, it's entirely tax-free. So you don't pay any capital gains tax here, it's entirely tax-free. But I have to say, this calculation is a pretty, let's say, worst case calculation actually. Because you don't only have 2% inflation, you also have a profit driver, which is the biggest profit driver in real estate. This is profit in case of location itself, which is not even mentioned in this calculation. So let's call it X here. So this comes on top. Moreover, you don't contribute 200 euros over 10 years actually, because every 3 years you can increase the rent, which means either after 3 years or even after 6 years, latest point typically, you don't have any contribution here out of your own pocket, including interest payments, amortization payments, management, and also maintenance. So the whole apartment is covering itself. So this would be now the latest point after 6 years where you buy the second apartment. Which means you can buy one apartment every 6 years just by investing 200 euros a month. Now you see how crucial it is that you start as early as possible. So this time horizon starts as early as possible, so you can buy more apartments and more apartments. What happens now after 9 years? So you have another 3 years. Latest point where you start generating profits out of your first apartment. So you don't contribute 200 euros out of your own pocket, you start generating 100 euros monthly. Now another point why it's so important to start as early as possible. Obviously there are other factors and maybe it's significantly faster, but let's keep it easy just to explain this properly. So, we have profit in case of location. You don't contribute 200 euros out of more than 10 years or at least 10 years. It's probably just 3 years or 4 or 5 or 6. If the tenant is leaving the apartment after 2 years, you immediately increase the rent. So probably after 2 years you already have profits. But since this is not 100% clear, I'm always calculating conservatively, because if you can buy another apartment in 2 years, yeah, fine. Okay? So it's significantly more than 56,000 euros in profit. Now you might say, yeah, but what about the initial equity capital investment? I have to invest some money out of my own pocket, probably. Yeah, it depends actually. So either you just take, you just pay the buying tax and the notary fee, which is between 5 to 7.5%. It actually depends a bit on the state where you are living, and typically a notary is charging slightly more if you're not fluent in English, if the notary has to explain the purchase contract in English. But let's say an average of 5 to 7.5%. Maybe you have a property agent also included, which is typically charging something around 3%. So you end up having 10% initial equity. Now you might say, well, my profit was 56, worst case scenario, without increasing rent, without profit in case of location. But let's say your profit was 56, now I have to invest 10% out of 200 purchase price. Well, is this really such a good investment? Well, actually, for sure. Because if you buy real estate and you rent it out, this full payment is entirely tax deductible, which means you receive 42% if that's your tax rate. If your tax rate is lower, then less. So you receive 9,400 euros as a tax benefit back to your bank account. So your real investment net is 11,600 euros to buy real estate. And even in worst case, you invest out of your own pocket 30,000 euros and you have a profit of 50,000 euros. Still makes sense, because this is just a calculation over 10 years. So obviously if you have a time horizon of 20 years, the profits are just becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. So even over 10 years it would actually make sense. And please keep in mind, the 56,000 euros profit would be worst case actually. So easy. Now, how do you plan possible real estate purchases? Okay, then let's do it here. So let's say you would like to invest heavily in real estate and not just only buying one apartment every 6 years possibly, which was actually a pretty conservative way of investing in real estate. So let's say you buy your first apartment. So let's make it easy. You buy your first apartment. You have 200 euros out of your own pocket. So now, if you remember, probably remember, you have 200 euros here, and after 6 years, let's do it like this, you typically don't pay anything out of your pocket anymore. Now, what you could do actually is you don't only buy one apartment, you buy 2 apartments with 200 euros each. So now after 6 years, let's do it like this, after 6 years you don't pay anything anymore out of your own pocket, and then you can buy again 2 apartments. Or what you could do is, always, if you saved these 20,000 euros here, if you save 20,000 euros, plus let's say an emergency fund to have some savings on the side, if you have saved 20,000 euros and you have 200 bucks left, why don't you always just buy another apartment? Because if you have the property management included here, anyway, in the 200 euros, the property management here, there is no reason actually to not own more than 2, 3, 4, 5, even 10 apartments. It's actually possible. It obviously depends on your discipline regarding saving money. But even if you earn, let's say, 50,000 euros, even with 50,000 euros annual income, it's still possible to buy your first apartment and to rent it out. It just depends on how much money you save. So you see, there are many, many opportunities to invest in real estate. This is even surface level information. So you need to know significantly more to invest properly in real estate. So if you would like to have help and real guidance to create a big real estate portfolio, then reach out. You can visit our website, you can book a free initial consultation, and we will create your individual real estate strategy to achieve goals like future second income, like early retirement, good retirement, even if you might leave Germany. So take care and talk to you soon.